About to react to the best and worst affirmative action tapes by Candace Owens. Anybody that know me know I love Candace Owens. I've been down with Candace Owens since she hit the scene with the Blexit movement. I'm down with the Blexit movement. If you're a Democrat coming up in 2024, either you just not educated, you don't know the facts, or something just wrong with you, and that's just what it is. It is what it is. Let's go.
The Supreme Court nixed affirmative action programs for admission decisions at Harvard University and the University of North Carolina in a major ruling yesterday. And quite surprisingly, essentially what they're saying is we are no longer allowed to systematically discriminate against Asian Americans for doing everything right. Yet people are freaking out. Black Americans are freaking out. White savior Americans who have that complex are freaking out. They're going, no, Black Americans can't do it by themselves. They need help. They're too stupid. Well, I have got the best reactions to this nixing. We're going to go over them. Plus, later on in the show, New York Post is reporting a major update to the Steven Crowder case. He asked for everything to be publicized. Well, at least what he asked for publicly. Actually, it turns out he asked for the exact opposite thing privately because he lies and lies and lies, and people just blowing to the fact that he's kind of a sociopathic liar. I'm going to cover it, all that and more today, coming up on Candace Owens. One of the greatest Thomas Sowell quotes ever. He wrote, quote, when people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment seems like discrimination. There is just no better way to categorize the responses that we saw yesterday to the fact that the Supreme Court essentially decided that college admissions must partake in the practice of equal treatment. So what's been going on in the background? What is affirmative action? We all know what it is. It says that if I, as a Black student, am underperforming against an Asian student or a white American student, then a university should look at the fact that I'm Black and say, well, of course, she's Black, so that's why she can't do as well as her Asian and white American peers, and they should let me in school ahead of these individuals. And that's always been very shocking to me because what's really happening, people will lie to you and tell you that this is passed down from slavery. Black Americans can't perform well in academics because of slavery. That's a lie. Because Black Americans are performing worse and worse as the decades go on. Black American literacy rates are plummeting. Mathematical rates are plummeting over time. America is not becoming a more racist society. We are just increasingly not being told that we have to meet academic criteria by, well, I call this white saviors. But what's really at root here, people will try to make this issue Black versus white. What's really happening at Harvard is open and flagrant discrimination. Asian Americans. Yes. So they'll tell you, oh, this is going to help white affluent Americans get into Harvard. Nope. The people that are achieving the most academically are Asian Americans, and they aren't coming from an affluent principles in their household. They are focused on academics. Anecdotally, I will never forget, I want to play with a girl when I was in third grade. Her name was Kathy. She was one of my best friends. She was Japanese. I remember going to her house. Now, we were in the same station in life. This was when I moved into my grandparents' house. It was, I would say, a very middle-class existence. And after school, unlike me, I used to be able to just ride my bike, go to the park, do whatever I wanted. Kathy's dad was terrifying. He immediately wanted her to take her shoes off, to get into the house, and to sit down and to show him everything that she had to work on. Kathy was not allowed to play or do anything until all of her homework was done. I didn't like going to Kathy's house. That wasn't fun. It wasn't what I was doing at my home. My parents didn't place the same implications upon me. I didn't have to do my homework first or even show them what my homework was. What was stopping my parents from doing that? Nothing. Just cultural differences. Asian Americans, we know, strive harder academically. That's always been the stereotype when we talk about Asian Americans watching a movie. The idea is the nerdy Asian American with their calculator, right? Stereotypes don't come from nowhere. Other stereotype doesn't come from nowhere. The fact that Black Americans place an emphasis on sports. Yes, we do. That is the truth. So it's not that shocking when you look up in the world and you examine the statistics of the amount of Black Americans that are thriving and dominating in the NBA and the NFL, and the amount of Asian Americans that should be thriving at Harvard and MIT, but are being routinely discriminated against on the basis of their ethnicity. So let's just go over those NBA stats. to data in 2021, 73.2% of NBA players are Black Americans. Oh my God, how could that be? There's not enough racial difference. We need to make sure that we aspire to racial quotas. It'd be great. What we should do instead is we should decline LeBron James at the Lakers and instead accept Ed Sheeran. We just don't, we don't have enough redheads. We don't have enough people from the UK that are being represented in the NBA. No, that would be pointedly ridiculous. We would all say that would be foolish. I wouldn't want to watch the NBA. I appreciate the fact that the best basketball players are dominating the sport. And as I said, we know why that is. As somebody who grew up in a Black household and has a Black family, every Black mother wants to believe that their child is the next Michael Jordan. That is the truth, right? It is the reason why we envy those individuals. It is the reason why politicians are falling over themselves to get an endorsement from somebody like LeBron James. We want LeBron James to tweet something about Black Lives Matter because that means that Black Lives Matter is going to raise $90 million and nobody's going to care about where the money's going. And they're all going to call Candace a coon because she doesn't have the street status that LeBron James does because he plays basketball. That's considered cool. That is where we are focused on culture. That's true. On the other side of that, you have individuals who say, okay, well, maybe my child is not going to play sports when they're at university. Maybe they're going to instead enjoy the math club, the math leagues. And I want them to strive to become a doctor. Now, I think I've been pretty open about the fact that the first 3 guys I dated in life were all Asian, and it just happens to be that they were very interested in science and very interested in math, and they defied no stereotypes. One of them is, in fact, a doctor today. So let's take a look at this document because I find it to be stunning that any individual could defend this. If you had switched around the races of this, if this was revealed and you had swapped Asian American for Black American on this chart I'm about to show you, there wouldn't just be protests in the streets. They would burn Harvard to the ground for just an unbelievable example of discrimination against Black Americans. But nope, nobody cares because it's Asian Americans. So this chart is separated, and this is how Harvard goes through their admission process. They look at the data of their applicants and they sort them into academic deciles according to their performance, right? So you see that's rated 1 through 10, 10 being the best on the left-hand side. So if you are in the best academic category, you are just absolutely amazing and you are sorted, and you are a white American versus an Asian American and versus an African American. That's what we are taking a look at, right? They accept of the highest academic decile, 10, 56.1% of African Americans. You have a 56.1% chance as a Black person in American society of getting into Harvard if you are in this academic rank. But then it drops all the way. So this is your exact year. You did everything the same. If you're a white American, that plummets all the way to 15.3%. You worked just as hard as that Black American. You don't know anything about their background that could be different. So what you're basically saying is Michelle Obama's children, who are going to Harvard, or at least one of them is going to Harvard, would be in this, represented by this 56.1%, assuming they're at the top, right, because they're Black. And if you're white, you're at 15%. Okay? Do you think that the Obama kids come up in a rough way, or just assuming because they're Black that they should be allowed to go to Harvard, because that's what Harvard's assuming? Then, if you think it doesn't get worse, it does for Asian Americans. It plummets to 12.7%. This is why they took this case to the Supreme Court. Could you imagine being an Asian American? You focused your entire life on your academics. You are in the highest academic ranking that Harvard looks at. And they are going to just accept 12.7% of you. But if you were Black, you would have a 56.1% acceptance rate. That is positively horrific. That chart continues. You can keep looking. If you're in just beneath that in the ranking of 9 of the academic decile, and you're white, they'll only accept 10% of the applicants. When weighed against 54.6%, pardon, of African Americans, and for Asian Americans, again, the lowest, just 7.6%. Nearly perfect academic ranking, and they're only going to take 7.6% of you because, I don't know, Asians are just doing too well. They don't like the fact that your morals of your household are focused on academics. They want somebody else. They want somebody that looks Black. And that is really the take that so many people that responded to this online had. They essentially were saying that now that we are removing this barrier and we are allowing Asian Americans, again, they are the number one people that are being, number one races being discriminated against, to be permitted based on their actual merits. In a society that is a meritocracy, we would want Asian Americans to get into universities based on their hard work. But people are seeing this and they're going, no, we can't have that because it's going to happen now. A lot of those black kids are not going to get into the universities that we've been artificially placing them in. So here are some of the positively worse states. First up, we have Michelle Obama. And why is this already a funny take? Well, because we know that her children are definitely in Harvard on the basis of legacy and because they are the president's daughters. And these are a perfect example of black children that are not growing up in a rough circumstance whatsoever and will be able to do whatever they want because of the wealth of their parents. But she decided to jump in and she wrote this on Twitter. She wrote, I wanted to share some of my thoughts on today's Supreme Court decision on affirmative action. Back in college, I was one of the few black students on my campus, and I was proud of getting into such a respected school. I knew I had worked hard for it, but still, I sometimes wondered if people thought that I got there because of affirmative action. It was a shadow that students like me couldn't shake, whether those doubts came from the outside or inside of our own minds. Oh, stop right there. Guess what, Michelle Obama? We just took care of that. No longer, they're going to know that you're there based on your academic achievement because they're no longer going to be artificially placing black students into places that they should not be on the color of their skin. Do we even need to read more? It's a stupid take, obviously, because we've just solved for that. She went on to write, the fact is this, I belong. And semester after semester, decade after decade, for more than half a century, countless students like me showed that they belong too. It wasn't just the kids of color who benefited either. Every student who heard a perspective they might not have encountered, who had an assumption challenged, who had their minds and their hearts open, gained a lot as well. It wasn't perfect, but there's no doubt that it helped offer new ladders of opportunity for those who, throughout our history, have too often been denied a chance to show how fast they can climb. Your chance to show how fast you can climb, Michelle Obama, is when you are in K through 12 in the public school system. There's your chance. There's your chance. You can work hard. You can say, I'm not going to play sports. You can say, I'm instead going to focus on my academics. And you can graduate in the same exact circumstances and work just as hard as white Americans and Asian Americans are working. And then you get into those schools not because of the color of your skin. That's racist. Because of your academic achievement. But by the way, of all of the worst takes, hers is actually the best. It's just going to go downhill from here because sometimes I don't even know what Democrats are talking about, if we're even following the same story, if we're looking at the same case. We had AOC that then came in, and she said this. It's just so implausibly stupid. It's amazing to me that she's just allowed to be this publicly and audaciously stupid, and there are no consequences for her stupidity. She wrote, if the Supreme Court of the United States was serious about their ludicrous colorblindness claims, they would have abolished legacy admissions, aka affirmative action for the privileged. Ooh, I think she's talking about Michelle Obama. 70% of Harvard's legacy applicants are white. The SCOTUS didn't touch that, which would have impacted them and their patrons. Oh, actually, AOC, that just wasn't the case they were looking at. Do you know what the Supreme Court does? First off, they don't legislate, you moron, okay? They can't go, oh, the case before me, which has been brought forward by Asian students, wondering about whether or not this is discriminatory, which is on the basis of what we do here at the Supreme Court. We interpret the Constitution, and we do have this 14th Amendment that says that we cannot discriminate based on race, which is exactly what Harvard is doing. But in AOC's mind, she wanted to look at this case, look at the Constitution, and say, F this, yo! You know what? Forget all of this. Forget you Asian kids. Forget what you're saying. I rule, I legislate, actually, that it's the legacy admissions that have to go. Bye-bye legacy admissions. How was she allowed to be this stupid? I just don't understand. What case does she think was happening? Was she following the case? Does she just say stuff? Yes. You know, she just says stuff. And this is what people are doing. They're just trying to make it seem like a case that wasn't brought between the Supreme Court was decided wrongly. And it wasn't brought. And by the way, regarding that, as I just said, legacy admissions, there is not going to be anything constitutionally that the Supreme Court can do about that because their job, again, is to interpret the Constitution as the law of the land. Next up, in responding to things that didn't happen, we have Gavin Newsom. He wrote this. They want to whitewash our nation's history. They want to bring America back to the era of book bans and segregated campuses. We cannot let them.
What? Gavin, stop it.
We want to talk about segregated campuses. That seems to be happening on liberal campuses. All of these graduations that are taking place. They want a black graduation versus an Asian graduation versus a LGBTQ purple, I think that's what they're calling it, graduation. Yeah, that's happening under liberal leadership. Conservatives are saying it's wrong and it's racist because we're pretty consistent on this. This is our consistent idea that all racism is wrong. Secondly, whitewash our nation's history. What are you talking about? Asian Americans brought this case forward because Asian Americans are being discriminated against. Now Asian Americans have been freed from that discrimination. Why are you making this a black and white issue? And what on earth are you talking about, book Dan? I just want to know what case he's responding to, because maybe we missed it and there was something else that he's really upset about. But he does seem to be responding to the Supreme Court's ruling. Last up, we have this girl, Erica Marsh, and this is amazing because we call this the Freudian slip. People actually thought this might be a parody count because it was just so outrageously and flagrantly racist. And this is what we talk about when we say the bigotry of low expectations and what white liberals actually think about black people. They just don't think we can achieve based on our own merit. Erica Marsh wrote, today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on black people. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system, which is exactly why affirmative action-based programs are needed. Today's decision is a travesty. Okay, let's do that again. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system. You guys have no merit. We have to just place you there to make you feel good because you're all pretty stupid. And now that we're removing this, it's obvious what's going to happen here is you're not going to see black Americans at Harvard. If that is the result, if we see a decrease and black Americans now, rather than being accepted at a 56.1% rate in the highest academic rank, are then plummeted to, 2%, good. Put us where we belong. We cannot respond to the issue, okay? We cannot actually make things better if you are artificially making it look like we're doing better when we're clearly not. And by the way, in case you missed it, I think I told you this on the show a few times, nobody, by what Michelle Obama is trying to tell you, was actually benefiting from affirmative action. Nobody, right? The kids that were benefiting, quote unquote, benefiting from this, the black students, were being found on academic probation because they were artificially mismatched into schools that were above their intellect, whereas they would have performed brilliantly had they been placed at schools that maybe didn't have the academic rigor of Harvard, but also was a really great school that they could have been at the top of their academic class. Black Americans are suffering because of this, white Americans are suffering because of this, and especially Asian Americans are suffering because of this. The great Clarence Thomas had this to say about the matter, which I thought was wonderful. He said, dislocation. I hold out enduring hope that this country will live up to its principles so clearly enunciated in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, that all men are created equal, are equal citizens, and must be treated equally before the law. Again, I do not understand how this is a conflict for some people. I do not understand the white savior mentality. I do not understand the black Americans who fight and preach the entire time about disparities, not understanding that it is unacceptable to discriminate so flagrantly against Asian Americans. All of it is just so patently wrong, and it has now been solved for. The Supreme Court has been doing tremendous work in tons of other regards as well. And let me say this. If you're a white American or an Asian American and you're saying more of us need to be in the NBA, then I implore you to work on your jump shot. If you are a black American and more of us need to be at Harvard and at UNC, then I implore you to work on your academics. And that's all I have to say about that. History was made on June 24, 2020.
So how y'all feel about that? She basically said what I said earlier in an earlier video, but Candace is hilarious. I love her. If y'all don't love her, y'all just be mad at the truth because she come with them facts. And that's why she's still standing to this day. But anyway, if y'all got a video y'all want me to react to, let me know. I'm all about diversity. I'm trying to learn. Y'all help me learn. I'm an independent free thinker. And I'm rolling with Donald Trump, man. They doing my boy wrong, man. If you can't see for yourself, you gotta go find it yourself. Because they ain't telling you the truth. You gotta go search for that truth and form your own opinion. But anyway, this y'all Kenny. I stimulate minds. Like, share, and subscribe. The next video I'm about to get into is this my opinion on this Angela Stanton King and Michier